The Middle East is one of the most complex regions in the world. Currently, there are 4 failing states and 3 wars, with major powers increasingly taking opposite sides. Countless armed militias and terrorist groups are spreading violence across borders. The region has seen conflict after conflict going well back into the 20th century. But among all the uprisings, civil wars, and insurgencies, 2 countries always seem to be involved: Saudi Arabia and Iran. They're bitter rivals, and their feud is the key to understanding conflicts in the Middle East. The Saudis and Iranians have never actually declared war on each other. Instead, they fight indirectly by supporting opposing sides in other countries and inciting conflicts. This is known as proxy warfare, and it's had a devastating effect on the region. Countries, especially poor ones, can't function if there are larger countries pulling strings within their borders. The Saudi-Iranian rivalry has become a fight over influence, and the whole region is a battlefield. It's why the rivalry is being called a Cold War. The most famous Cold War was fought for 40 years between the United States and the Soviet Union. They were looking forward to the day when their flag would fly over the entire world. They never declared war on each other, but clashed in proxy wars around the world. Each side supported dictators, rebel groups, and intervened in civil wars to contain the other. Like the US and Soviet Union, Saudi Arabia and Iran are 2 powerful rivals, but instead of fighting for world dominance, they're fighting over control of the Middle East. In order to understand the Saudi-Iranian rivalry, let's go back to the origins of each country. In the early 1900s, the Arabian Peninsula was a patchwork of tribes under the control of the Ottoman Empire. After World War I, the empire collapsed, leaving these tribes to fight each other for power. One tribe from the interior, the Al Saud, eventually conquered most of the peninsula. In 1932, they were recognized as the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. 6 years later, massive oil reserves were discovered in Saudi Arabia, and in an instant, the Saudi monarchy was rich. That oil money built roads and cities all around the desert country, and it helped forge an alliance with the US. On the eastern side of the Persian Gulf, another country was emerging, but having a much harder time. Iran also had massive oil reserves and an even bigger Muslim population, but constant foreign intervention was creating chaos. Since the 18th century, Iran had been invaded by the Russians and British twice. In 1953, the US secretly staged a coup, removing the popular Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. In his place, they propped up a monarch, Reza Shah, who was aggressively reforming Iran into a secular, westernized country. But he harbored corruption and terrorized the population with his secret police, the Savak. By the 1970s, both Saudi Arabia and Iran had oil-based economies and had governments heavily backed by the US, but the feelings among each population were very different. That's because Iran's Muslims felt stifled by the Shah's reformations, and by the end of the decade, they finally fought back.